About why is it hard to say no? We have literally been diving into our book of the, I don't know, we call it Book of Weeks, 15 Secrets Successful People Know About Time Management. And it has been truly been a journey for us. And so I'm excited to be back with you all again. This is Dr. Eve, and I wear many hats, but my goal is to touch one life and touch millions. As we continue to develop the leadership community that we have, understanding that we're never meant to live in isolation and that we need each other, and together we can do many things. I thought about something today prior to coming in. I thought about how we often say self-sufficiency. We want to be self-sufficiency. And I thought about that thing. I was listening to someone the other day and I heard this individual mention, don't even know his name, but it just really struck me that we teach self-sufficiency, but we really should be teaching is community sufficiency. Because what happens if something happens to self, then everything that you worked for to be sustainable, whether that's for you or for your family, becomes insufficient because there's no one to carry on the thing that you were creating. Kind of sort of goes along the same lines of what I have been sharing about, Miles Monroe's goal for us all was if what you do dies with you, then it was ineffective leadership. So it kind of aligned along that course. And so I want us to begin to think about that when we're thinking about growing and our roles in leadership. How are we helping others to be sustainable across whatever it is that and are able to teach others? And so I'm coming in today, want to check in with all of you to see how you are doing. We are talking about one little word that multiplies success. Our topic today is, why is it so hard to say no? No is an entire sentence, and that is what we are going to be diving into today. And we're going to begin today's conversation by asking you a question. First, introduce yourself to us, and then I want to ask you the question, why is it hard to say no? I want to know your perspective. Why is it hard to say no? And if you want to go ahead and tell us who you are, where you're calling in from, what city are you calling in from, and why has it been hard to say no? I know all of us have had that challenge a time or two, or it would never have been a need for it to be a topic of conversation. So who wants to go first?
I'm from Greenville, North Carolina. I feel that it's hard to say no sometimes because you first don't want that need to go unmet if you have the capabilities to fulfill that need. Maybe not always the capacity, but you do have the capabilities to fulfill that need. And so I think that's kind of the biggest thing for me, feeling guilty for not being able to do something I know I'm capable of doing.
So good. Thank you for sharing that. We have Nancy Michigan, and she is sharing. So she's saying, I don't want people, especially my loved ones, to suffer if I have it. Okay, that's good. So good. Okay, so we have some pre-understanding of why one would say no. And now we want to dive into what does the author say about that one little word that multiplies success.
And which book are you referring to?
Okay, the book that we are still reading is 15 Secrets Successful People Know About Time Management, and we are actually on chapter 9. We are using these topical chapters topical conversations to facilitate discussion for us to, be better managers of our time. My congratulations to Aisha Powell for finishing her first semester of PhD studies and EDD studies. And we're so
Yeah.
excited for you, Aisha, and we hope that that was an exciting semester for you. Short chapter, and we're going to just do some bite sizes into it. I will be asking you all at the end of this what the author is saying about the 7 easy ways to say no. And then what is your take on that, whether by chat or whether by verbal articulation. So you can join us one of 2 ways. And so the author dives into this conversation. He gives a quote by Steve Jobs saying, "Focusing is about saying no." How often have we heard the word focus, right? Focus. Hello, Rosalind. Welcome to the space. We're excited to see you. Welcome, welcome. We are diving into chapter 9, one little word that multiplies success. And if you can, drop in the chat your name and where you are coming in from, and what is a reason that has kept you from saying no? That is the question that we started with today. What is a reason that has kept you from saying no? So the author goes on to dive into such things as email, social media, and text messaging. Has not only increased our the overall amount of time and information that we have to deal with, but it also made it far too easy for other people to ask for things, right? Because they've got open lines of communication to us. How many times have you heard, no one should have that much access to us? But they do, right? They do. It's no longer just a phone call that you can choose to answer, but now there's text, there's email, there's groups, there's social media, there's Facebook, messaging, Instagram, all of these things that can are barriers can or access to us to people accessing us. So that's how the author introduces it, the endless ways that people can request your time. What are some ways that you can think about that people have requested of your time? And I just want to see how that measures up to what the author is talking about.
Sometimes, like I get a lot of social media like DMs or messages or whatever. So it's like if someone sees you online, then they assume that means you have time, right? Um, and then people will reach out and say, "Oh, they'll contact you because they see you're active." And sometimes you're not really active. You may just have not shut down all the way, and so they think you're still online. But I do get a lot of requests where people will see me and then they'll start messaging me and say, like, "Oh, can you do this or do that? I see you online." And sometimes I just ignore that. Sometimes I close right out as soon as they send a message.
That is
Sometimes it's just easier just not to respond
right.
than to say no.
That's so good. Because how often, they got the blue light, they got the red light special, the blue light special, the
Mm-hmm.
green light special. When they come up with all of these ways to, as soon as you open up your social media, people really start. They are monitoring the green
Mm-hmm.
light. They're
Yeah.
monitoring the red light. So that's wild. Anyone else have a take on that?
Recently, I have had friends who wanted to reach out, and which is great when I do have the capacity to support them and listen to them. But recently, I've had, some friends who've been talking about the reoccurring things,
Yeah.
and I just, and I'm a fixer, I'm a problem solver. So I'm like, okay, I can listen, and I can be there to listen. But then I'm like, okay, let's plan a course of action to resolve this. And when I do try to give them different options, and they don't want to take those, put those plans in action, it's hard to listen to them again discussing their own the same issue.
Right.
And so I've had to create boundaries where, if I'm saying, hey, you've been struggling with this, read your Bible, but you're not reading your Bible and you're sending me messages on Instagram with and things to, strengthening your core. Just tell my friends, hey, I just don't have the capacity right now.
Right. That's something else. I completely agree with you on that. Particularly if you have um, been sharing on, solutions, even
Man.
even if that is a theme that you have been sharing, even on your social media, people know who you are. People see. People know what your systems are, but sometimes they just don't want to choose those things as solutions. And so I completely agree with that, Aisha, that they can hear but they don't hear, right? um Dina is saying texting when she doesn't answer her phone. Exactly. Texting when you don't answer your phone. I honestly would prefer people to text me rather than call me, because I don't answer the phone. I don't, because I don't believe people should have that kind of access to me all the time. And then what another thing is, I just don't wear my phone on my body all the time. I use my phone as like a landline. It's on the desk somewhere, or it's on the table somewhere. It's somewhere, but it's not attached to my body. So, and I think that we live in a society where people always have their phones in their hands, and that they're in their phones like literally 24/7, and they think that everyone else is too. So that's a good point, Dina, that we aren't wearing our phones. And I think that it's okay to not do that. So the author goes on, any more minutes, right? How often have you heard that you're in town and, hey, can we meet, right? Or you may have even done that. Like, I literally do that when I am in town, because I have contacts in various cities, even all of you, right? And I'll say, hey, let's get together, but I don't want to ever encroach on someone's time. So I welcome no. As a matter of fact, I believe that I remember a recent conversation with a good friend who is on this line right now, and I said she realized that she had made a commitment before looking at her calendar, and she doubled back and she says, you know what, no, I have a previous commitment. And I literally was so proud of her for saying no, that I texted her and said, I'm so proud of you for saying no. Do you remember that? I
Yes, and
literally.
it was very empowering to, know that you showed me grace, and just to know that, I wasn't letting you down in that regard.
Yeah, so that's how that can look, right? So not only is the power of this no, is not one way. It's a two-way thing. Like, you have to be okay with another person's no as well. Because we all do this thing. We all need to be cognizant of how we encroach on the time of other people. So, making sure that you give that person back the that honor of, yeah, I'm like super proud of you for saying no. Maybe we could do it next week or something, right? Or when you're ready. When you're Thank you. Welcome to the call, new people who are here. We are asking those of you who are here to please drop your name in the chat and where you are chiming in from. And do you remember a time when it was hard to say no? Do you remember a time when it was hard to say no relative to the 6 degrees of learning that we are doing here in our community? Welcome to the call, Talisha. I see you. Again, Rosalind looks like she's in a meeting, but we will wait to see what her response is to that as well. So again, we're asking all of those who are coming onto the call to drop your name and where you are calling in from, and do you remember a time when it was hard to say no? We're going to move on to another scenario that the author mentions from the dean of a local college. Says, I'm excited to talk to you about what we are doing here in the business department. Would you be available to meet for coffee one day? Now, that's an option because the person could. What do you think a good response would be? What would you offer that person if you had the boundaries of no? What would you offer that person?
I'll say something real quick. I would ask them, well, look at my calendar, it's up to date. Schedule something and then we can meet for coffee, at that time. But my thing is to kind of direct them to where I have open time because I do time block my calendar.
Okay.
And then you can schedule something in there and we can meet during that time. So, yeah.
So excited to hear that you are time blocking, Dina, and that, yes, redirecting them to your calendar where there is open time. I love that response. Any other responses or ways that you would handle that? Others who are in the room? I'm so excited, Dina, that you're time blocking. That was one of our previous chapters. Anyone else want to chime in or have a comment? You can put it in the chat, and we will look at. We will also be recording your responses from the chat. Welcome Talisha in from Georgia. She says she's driving right now. Welcome to the call. And if you have something, please don't chat while you are trying to type while you are driving, but use your voice, okay? if you're able. And if you have something you would like to stop me and a comment, please feel free, because this is meant to be community engagement. So please feel free to raise your hand so I can stop or pause or, on a comment if you want to reflect on something that's being discussed. The next thing, a solution, a way that the author reveals that people tend to get in ask for some of your time is, he says 9 emails from readers introducing themselves and telling me about their current challenge. So now I have like a host of emails that I have to read and or respond to. But how did we talk about, can someone give me some ways that we talked about addressing emails? Anyone on the call who went through the chapter where we talked about time managing our emails? I believe it was how to leave the office. No, it wasn't that. I believe it was.
I have in my notes here. Keep emails brief. Have meetings on the go. I know you mentioned something about meetings. So maybe it's a meeting on the go if it's not scheduled. But keep emails brief. Happy.
Anyone else? Thank you. Those are good. But there was one more specific one that we talked about in addressing emails, and I think it was, I don't want to say it was chapter 6, where we talked about, chapter 7, actually. It was chapter 7 where we talked about the 7 steps to mastering your email. Anybody remember that?
Hey, it's Talisha. I don't know if I would be correct or not, but I think I was on a call maybe 2 weeks ago with Shani, and I think I remember it. You all saying about only checking it maybe once or twice. I think
that's correct, and it also goes back to what Dina was saying about time blocking. So your emails, checking your emails can also be time blocked, and you can also add a time when you have to address those emails. So your no is not necessarily a no, it's just a better way. It's no to doing it right now. No to doing it right now, but managing it in a way like Aisha said, you know you have the skill to help someone, and so you want to help them. Or like Dina said, you don't want to anyone to suffer if you have it, right? So all of those things are meaningful, and so again, that particular one goes back to addressing 7 steps to mastering your email. So this book, the knowledge that is being gained in the wisdom of this book is everything is building upon, is building on each other. It's like theory builds on theory upon theory upon theory, right? And so we can always go back and reflect on where, as we are moving through the chapters, reflect back on when, instead of just an outright no is okay because it's a whole sentence, but what is another way, right? So thank you all for that. Thank you. Welcome to the call, Charlotte. We are excited to have you here. Please drop in the chat where you are calling in from and answer this one question. Do you remember a time when you had to say no? Do you remember a time when you had to say no? And that could be any of the 6 degrees of what we share of well-being here. That would be physical, mental, financial, business, all the things, spiritual. It could be in any of those areas, right? Because we're talking again about the importance of managing our time. So the author goes on to say, and then, of course, are the requests that come in from LinkedIn. How many of you get 50 notifications a day? I do. Welcome, Charlotte, in from Hampton, Georgia. We are excited to have you, sis. You are able to communicate both verbally. We are recording this, so you're able to communicate verbally if you like, or if it's something you just want to say in the chat. We are acknowledging your comments in the chat as well. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the call. I'm so excited to have you today. And if you have studied chapter 9, please feel free to unmute yourself and add some value, some wisdom to what you understand about that word that we're talking about. First of all, why is it so hard to say no? And that one little word that multiplies our success, right? And we have seen right here today so many ways that you all have mentioned about how you deal with that word no. So we're going to move on to a quote in the words of Sarah Hendershot. She's an Olympics. Now we're all now watching the Olympics in Paris 2024. So this quote was really interesting to me, and I want us to talk a bit about that, because we are currently in the throes of watching the Olympics 2024. Sarah Hendershot is an Olympic rower for the United States and competed in the Olympics. She is currently training for Rio. This is all half past tense because this is her words. Part of being an Olympic athlete is just that there are a lot of things that I have to miss and moments or events that I have to skip. I've almost just gotten to the point where I'm used to having to say no to things. And I am reminded of a recent discussion about Simone Biles and her hubby, who is a what's the team he plays for? The Pat.
He just got traded to the Bears.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Get out of town.
Well, not just, but he'll be playing for Chicago this season.
Okay. So has anybody been watching that, where they've been doing all of these commentary or interviews about these individuals, the Simone Biles and her husband, talking about the time, because their relationship has been long distance, and the times that because of the commitment. Have y'all had any eyes on those conversations? I thought it was quite interesting. I'll wait and see if any of you have had a part in hearing any of those conversations? So they were talking about, I want to say it was Good Morning America. They were interviewing her and about some commentary that her Biles' husband, I can't remember his name for some reason, was having with some friends when they first met, talking about their distance and the fact that the Greenville Packers, not Green Bay, is it Green Bay Packers? Green Bay Packers? Whatever team he was playing for, released him to come and be with her during the Olympics, which is unheard of, right? Because of the intensity of the training that each of them have to have. Same with Simone. You know, the Olympics is a big deal, and the training that she's had to have has, puts a lot of distance between her and her husband. And I just thought that was a good conversation. That was a right now conversation that actually speaks to the words of this particular Olympic rower, who says that part of being an Olympic athlete is just that there are a lot of things that I have to miss and moments or events that I have to skip. I want to touch base with Miss Powell, who is also in grad school. How does it affect you as a student?
Saying saying no.
Yeah, how does it affect you? Being a student and having to say no to things. Like, what's that like for you? And why do you have to do it? Why do you think that no word is important?
I think no is important right now, currently, so I can invest in my now, so I can have a better future to be able to meet the needs of the people that I'm called to serve.
That's good. I remember
I
being.
think, yeah.
That's good, and you can add more if you'd like.
No, I just think it's important for me because that, and also um, self care is important. And so I know that um, I have parents that are getting older. I have aunts that are getting older, and I have to prioritize my family. So I also have to have some capacity for for them. And so if I'm obligated to so many others, I know that takes away time from them as well.
Correct. I remember being in grad school, and it was so rigorous. You know, there's nothing like it. Like, you got a paper due today, you got a paper due tomorrow, and you have to read 10 papers to write that paper. So the rigor of grad school, I had to go into a shell. I literally had to go into a shell and say no to a lot of things. But but even if I said yes, I would always take my books. People thought it was real strange, like she never shows up without her books. But I had a child who was active and actively involved. I had to make sure that I was still meeting the needs of my daughter, but at the same time, I couldn't, I was trying to be fully present, but I had to take my books so that when she wasn't performing, I was able to put my head in my books. But when she was performing, I could actually be present. But because performance took us away from the home all the time, I had to take my books, right? So the rigor, I would have to say also the rigor of the program caused me to have to say no to a lot of things too. What do you think? Welcome. Welcome, Raquel, to the space. We are pleased, if you will, put your name in the chat and where you are chiming in from, and do you remember a time when you had to say no to something? Our conversation today is about chapter 9. Why is it so difficult to say no? And the chapter title is One Little Word That Multiplies Success. Now, Miss Powell shared with us why, as a student, it saying no is critical because of the requirements and the commitment, right, of school, something that high level learning. How about any of the entrepreneurs on the call? Would you like to share and either and also professional? I know Rosalind's in the legal space, and you have to prepare for trials and things like that. What are some what? How does that word or saying no or your commitment, your profession, impact you making those boundaries of no? I want to hear from you all. Any of you,
Yeah.
share your perspectives.
Well, I can just say that I struggled with it for years before I mastered no. um, if it came to church or family, it was very difficult for me to say no. And then I got burned out. I literally almost had like a breakdown. And I just got to the point where I was like, I cannot continue to be there for people to the detriment of my health. And and it just got to the point where I had to do it. And because what I would do is I would commit to things where people would give me like a little bit of the information or make light of it, and then especially because people would come with legal needs, right, or financial needs or whatever, and so you start doing it, and it was like, oh, I just need you to write a letter. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, I could pretty quickly, draft a letter of some sort or whatever. But then you start talking to the person, and it's like, well, they don't only need you to do a letter, you need to do some research in order to be able to do the letter.
Yeah.
And then, so what I thought would be 30 minutes would be, a full day's worth of work where I didn't necessarily have that time commitment to give. And so I just learned to say, and a lot of times I don't answer my phone. Like oftentimes, I let it go to voicemail. And this just made it easier for me. So that way I can listen to the message, and then I can better formulate when I had the time to commit to help. Like if you weren't just calling to say hello, how are you, or whatever, I very rarely, even to this day, probably for the last 3 years, when you call me, 9 times out of 10, it's going to go to voicemail first. And I just had to put some things in place that just made it easier for me, because it's hard to tell your family no. You love them, you want to make sure they're okay. I love my church, and I was very active at church and served in a lot of committees. And I think when people realize your abilities to do certain things, the more they know that you're able to do, the more they will continue to kind of pile on you. And so you do, for your own mental and physical well-being, sometimes you have to say no.
So those boundaries
Because
are
I would
important.
I'd work, a 10, 12-hour day, and because I committed to something. And that's one thing I try to stand really strong on, is like, if I commit to something, I'm going to do it. I don't care if it's to my detriment. So even if I committed to doing something for you that day and I worked 12 hours, that means I had to stay up the middle of the night in order to meet that deadline,
That
right? So
deadline, that's right.
that's why you have to, really look out for yourself, and be cognizant when you commit, and the time that you commit to do things, because you have to factor in your life first before you can kind of pour in and give to others, if it's not an emergent situation.
Thank you for that professional perspective. Any of my
Yeah.
entrepreneurs want to share why these words, why this is important? As this Olympian has shared, um, she had to miss those moments and she had to miss those events. Miss Powell has mentioned why it being in EDD program, the rigor of that program, why it's important that she must say no to things. Our Miss Thomas has mentioned being in the legal field, but the love of her love of mankind, also will place sacrifices on her at her work, in the profession as well, because of preparation time for the things that people often need. Anyone here as an entrepreneur want to share why? Or teacher or student, whatever your profession is, please chime in. Why those words are critical. And you can from any perspective, because you remember we're 6 degrees, including spiritual, financial, all the things, right? So feel free to chime in from where you are, and whatever degree from which you want to share. If no one wants to, or if you have something you want to share, just raise your hand and I will bring you back into the space. Otherwise, we're just going to keep moving on. So that's what the Olympian was sharing. She said that even 30-minute chunks of time for a phone call or coffee meeting means something else won't get done. So let's talk about being aware of the things that every time you say yes, you every time you say yes, you're saying no to something else, right? So Warren Buffett says the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. I don't know that I can say no to almost everything, but I'm getting really good at saying no. And I think that's with age as well. I don't know if I can buy into his, but I guess with he had a way of life about him since the beginning. And most of his time commitments is reading. He often will tell you that in everything, in every interview I've ever seen of him, and he talks about his patterns, right? His the way that he does, right? Age is definitely a factor for me too, Dina, Miss Orsburn. And so he talks a lot about, he reads a lot, so he has a commitment. And so we have to also honor the commitments that we have to ourselves, and so that no one interferes with those commitments as well. So I like that. So let's talk about, again, what does the research say about it? There's a story in here, and I don't. Again, y'all want to take up some time to read this because this story is so interesting. This is about a young woman who was a undergrad student, who kept finding herself saying yes to things, and or but she's a mom, she's a student, she's a wife, she's a lot of these things, and she make all these commitments, and now it's hard for her to remembering that every yes was a no to something else. So I'm gonna leave that for you all to read. People who routinely say no to requests for their time report higher levels of happiness and energy. And I would have to say that I do. When I started putting those boundaries in place, I do find a lot of happiness in my life because I'm not always putting myself out there in pure exhaustion. We know that helpers as well, helpers often have a difficult time saying no because they can help. Their life is helping another person, building a community, all of the things even that we do right here. You will find activators, those who are activators, those are community builders, those who are just wanting to to share themselves, see the good. You're always going to find yourself overwhelmed by the need of others. So it's very important that we think about that. Anyone else want to chime in on that particular segment? All right, let's go on to Aisha. Can you share, or Miss Powell, could you share page 94 where it talks about every yes is a no to something else? Share a little bit about in their own words. Can you open us up with that? And welcome to the call, Raquel Wilson from Omaha, Nebraska. Raquel is works at night, so she comes in anyway. Thank you for your commitment. She's always here to add value to our community, and we are so excited to have you with us. And Charlotte, if you have something you would like to share, please let us know. Okay, if Miss Powell, if you are available to share.
I'm sorry, I don't have my book with me. I'm not at home right now.
Okay, no worries. How about you, Raquel? Would you like to share on In Their Own Words, page 94? We're talking about in there, every yes is a no to something else.
I am also out of home.
Oh,
But really quick, I just wanted to say, Coach often repeats that phrase about every yes is a no to something else. If you're like spreading yourself too thin in a lot of groups or a lot of chats or a lot of different programs, what you should be working on, you're not working on wholeheartedly because you said yes to something that's not as important. So
that's good.
Coach talks about that quite a bit. But I'm not at home and I don't have my book in front of me, so I apologize.
That's okay. Thank you. That was a great value add because she's right. We both have a coach, and she does share that with us. And one of the things that I'm finding that is has been extremely valuable to me is to keep the main thing the main thing. Like I don't deviate away from the calling. Right? I'm gonna have this call every single Tuesday because this is what I'm called to do. This is my not only my spiritual work, my educational work, my community work. It's engaged. Everything is centered around building community, right? And making sure that folks are well. Because why? I am a community health and human service educator. At the end of the day, that's who I am. That's who God called me to be. And so I have to stand in that one thing, right? And now, if that allows me to help someone diversify in their finances and develop in their walk with Christ, or help them to find that thing that they can build in entrepreneur, then that's okay. Well, we're going to do it through this means because I understand the calling. So understanding your calling is extremely important, and keeping the main thing the main thing, so that every yes is a no. It won't be a no to something else, right? If it's in alignment. Does that make sense? Anybody want to share? Anybody want to share on that? Dina says shalom. Me too. Oh, you're welcome. Raquel says I enjoy it here. Dina says yes, age is definitely a factor. All right. So the author goes on to say, if something is not a hell yeah, then it's a no. That means it has to be in a line. I say that would be me. It has to be in right alignment. Like it has to be that thing that provokes that excitement, about doing that thing. And that would for me would be, oh yeah, that's right. That's in right alignment. So I would say instead of it, if it's something that is in right alignment, then it's a if it's not in right alignment, then it's a no for me. Um, the author goes on to share from the is an this author's perspective, and the author says multipliers realize that perfection is achieved not only when nothing more can be added, but when nothing more can be taken away. Wow. It is the permission to ignore, because anything we can say no to today creates more time tomorrow. What y'all take on that? Multipliers realize that perfection is achieved not only when nothing more can be added, but when nothing more can be taken away. It is the permission to ignore, because anything we can say no to today creates more time tomorrow. I love that. What y'all's thought on that? True focus. What's y'all's take on that? Anybody?
I like that it says, with the perfection, nothing can be added and nothing can be taken away. Um, I still, I'm thinking, I'm still processing that, but for me, I've learned for this program that it's not going to be perfection. It's
Right.
not going to be perfection because I work full time. I'm getting this, degree, and life is going to throw a bunch of stuff in to you. So I was, you know, prior trying to be perfect in all my roles, but I've come to the maturity level and acceptance level where I know that everything won't be perfect. So I can just do my best and just get this degree. And that's what a lot of our, professors have told us, just get through the program. Don't focus on grades or getting the perfect feedback. Just, be consistent, don't try to add anything else. If, something, just not try to overwhelm yourself. That's kind of what I'm getting, but I'm still trying to process the quote too.
That's really good because it's funny you should mention that, Miss Powell, because in chapter 5, how to leave the office at 5, if y'all remember us talking about that, we said that we were talking about perfectionism being everything to everyone, and how it is a disease to please, and how the phenomena is closely related to the disease of perfectionism. And it went on to say, it's dangerous to base our self-worth on what others think of us. So the author also talked about that perfectionism. I'm so glad you brought that up, because remember I said he really does hone in on all of those things. Dina mentions excellence, not perfection. Exactly. So thank you for that engagement, both Dina and Miss Powell. So the next reality or quote was, true focus is saying no to the things you really want to do. That's interesting. Saying no to the true focus is saying, oh, I bet I know what that's about. True focus is saying no to the things you really want to do. Who is that for? Who is that for? I think there's a whole chapter we talked about. Anybody remember? Anyone remember chapter 4? The procrastination cure. you know, you it's easier to do the things that you want to do, the things that are easy. Does anyone remember the discussion around that? I believe Rosalind, you was in on that one, that procrastination conversation. But when the author mentions true focus is saying no to the things you really want to do, I think about that chapter and how usually we say yes to the things. Oh yeah, he mentions that procrastination is saying yes to the things that are easy. Okay, no worries. She says you have to jump off. Okay, no worries. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here next week. And excited to have you. So yeah, I think that's a whole thing. And then the author also goes on to say, my best tool is to keep front of mind this idea. Everything you say yes to means you are saying no to something else. Always. Everything you say yes to means you're saying, how many times have you said yes to something way down the road and then realize, oh, that your life's not changing, dinner doesn't change, your children's school schedule doesn't change, your the things your normal activities in life doesn't change, but you said yes to something, and now you go way down there to that yes, not having time blocks, not having managed your time, not having managed all the things that we talked about in this chapter, only to get down there and realize you now got a conflict. What you gonna do? What you gonna say? Anybody want to have a comment before we walk into why it's hard to say no, some other ways, and then some ways to help yourselves to say no? Anybody else want to comment? Yeah, we're moving into the latter part of our chapter where it talks about why is it hard to say no. Some of the things that are mentioned here are we're afraid of. Dina says I'm enjoying the conversation, but she's got to hop off. Cool. So I'm going to continue the conversation because my YouTube visitors over here, I want to make sure that they are engaged in the finale of this conversation. Why is it hard to say no? Some of the things that are mentioned are we're afraid to make people mad. 2, we're afraid to hurt someone's feelings. 3, we want to be liked. 4, we don't want to be rude. We were raised to be polite. Or 5, we underestimate how much time it really takes. And if you notice that a lot of these things were mentioned in our conversation today. The next, we aren't clear on our own priorities. That's that procrastination thing, right? We feel good by being helpful. How many of our participants mentioned that today? Another thing, we like earning future return favors, right? And if you have a comment, please let us know. I am getting the finale done over here for the YouTube video. So the author goes on to give us 7 ways to say no. 7 ways to say no. First of all, no is enough. Know that no is a whole sentence and it is enough. You don't owe it to anybody to have to say any more than that. That's really, really important for you to be able to just say no. He talks about number 1, but I'm on a deadline right now and I'm not taking. They give scenarios. So I want to give you maybe 1 or 2 scenarios to close us out for today. One of those scenarios is, but I'm on a deadline right now and am not taking any new meetings until I'm done. I use this approach often with strangers who cold contact me. So we do a lot of cold contacting in industry when we are doing real estate and transactions as well, or when we are looking for a prospect for sale, right? In sales, we do this a lot as entrepreneurs as well. I don't specify what the deadline is since they're strangers. They don't need to know my details and shouldn't expect me to share. And the word deadline has a magic to it, a power that most people can relate to. All right, let's throw out another scenario. We're going to take it and then we're going to close out this live. And I'm happy to connect, but there is no daylight on my calendar until 2:15 p.m. That's good. No daylight on my calendar until 2:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a specific date. That's a really good one. This is what I usually say to someone who I don't know personally, but who is vaguely connected in some way. Maybe they are a friend of someone who used to work for me from years ago. That's pretty good. The intent of this approach is to not reject them outright, but to let them know I don't really like that word, hustling, and I have a very busy schedule. All right. This response sends the message that their issue had better be pretty important. And if they really want to meet with you, they'll take the offered time slot in the distant future. I found that most of these people just respond and say, "Oh, no worries, you sound swamped. Let's just connect when you're less busy," and they will go away. Because that's for the person that you absolutely don't know or maybe know in some vague way. But those are 2 scenarios. We invite you. My name is Dr. Eve. I am a community health and human service educator with the innovative approaches to manifest your wealth and excellence support community for leadership. And we are excited if you'd like to join us. We meet every Tuesday at 1:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please check us out in the comment section, click in our bio, and or look in the description to get registered for a future conversation. Our next conversation will be talking about the powerful Pareto principle. Join us next week as we continue our conversations in community, making redefining well-being as the highest form of equity. Any closing comments from our participants today? Any closing comments? Thank you all for coming. So many of you were in the room and so excited to have you all. Thank you. This is Dr. Eve, your community health and human service educator with Touch One Life, Touch Millions. Signing off. Peace and blessings.